It started like any other quiet morning on Earth. The skies were calm, the cities alive with lights, movement, and laughter. Children played in the streets while old satellites drifted above in low orbit. No one saw it coming. No one expected death to fall from the sky. At 6:37 UTC, the first energy pulse hit London. It wasn't an explosion. It was like reality twisted, then snapped. Buildings crumbled as if pulled from the inside out. Vanished without a sound. A second later, Tokyo followed. Then Sao Paulo. Then Johannesburg. Within 10 minutes, 20 of Earth's largest cities were turned into blackened craters. The skies filled with fire, clouds vanished, and strange shadows moved through the upper atmosphere. Earth's defense satellites lit up in panic, but they had no target, no ship, no warning. Just a storm of invisible destruction raining down. From somewhere beyond the moon, the world screamed. And above it all, the Galactic Federation remained silent. Humanity had joined the Galactic Federation 40 years earlier. It was supposed to be a new era of peace, trade, knowledge, shared progress. Earth had been the youngest species allowed and called a promising child by alien diplomats. Humans had listened. They followed the rules, paid their dues, sent delegates, even allowed Federation outposts on Mars and Europa. In return, they received advanced technology, medicine, and a few guarded secrets of faster-than-light travel. It wasn't equality, but it was a start. They believed the Federation would protect them if danger ever came. They believed in unity. But unity was a lie. As cities fell and governments collapsed, Earth's emergency channels reached out. From underground bunkers and deep-sea bases, humans sent coded messages to the galactic network. Help us. We are under attack. Coordinates attached. Civilian casualties massive. Unknown energy weapons. Request military assistance immediately. There was silence, then static, then familiar response. It came from a mid-level Federation relay station orbiting a gas giant in the Delta sector. The voice was cold, not angry, not sad, just ... indifferent. Sol system is no longer under Federation protection. All resources and defense units have been reallocated. We recommend total evacuation if possible. Do not attempt further contact. The message repeated once. Then nothing. The people of Earth didn't know what was worst, the attack itself, or the moment they realized no one was coming, humanity had been cast aside like trash. The promising child had been left to die in the dirt. No explanation, no apology. Only silence. In orbit, Earth's last remaining fleet of warships sold. Patched-up vessels like the Luna Lance and Vigilance II tried to fight back. They launched toward what they thought was the origin point of the pulses. Only one ship survived long. Enough to send a final message back. There is something hiding behind the moon. It's not a fleet, it's like a machine. No engines, no crew. Just ... eyes, watching. Then silence again. Governments collapsed within days. With leaders gone, power grids failing, and cities in flames, humanity broke apart in two fragments. But even in the ruins, some held on. Old bunkers under Denver, a hidden lab beneath the Himalayas, a forgotten spaceport near Buenos Aires. Survivors, scientists, soldiers, children, they hid, they cried, but they also planned. Because pain did something to humans that no other species in the galaxy understood. Pain sharpened them. Betrayal made them colder, smarter, harder. They didn't die off. They adapted. 5 years passed. Earth was no longer green and blue. It was gray. Skiles is silent, but beneath the surface. Under burned-out cities and deep inside the planet's crust, the last humans began to change. They stopped waiting for help. They stopped sending messages into space. The name Federation became a curse. They focused only on survival, then on rebuilding. And soon, on something else, the children who had grown up in the dark tunnels and old labs knew only anger. They didn't dream of stars, they dreamed of payback. They learned how to rebuild machines from scraps, how to fix plasma reactors, how to connect alien tech with human instinct. They didn't try to copy the Federation's ways. They made their own, messy, fast, brutal. They called themselves the Iron Flame, a name whispered in old war songs. They had no planet, no allies, no home but. They had fire in their hearts, and they remembered everything. The biggest change came when a scavenger team found the broken remains of a Federation relay drone half buried in the ice of Greenland. It had been shot down during the first wave of destruction. But inside, its black box were codes, blueprints, data. All Federation tech was locked behind layers of encryption. But humans had learned patience in the ruins. It took them 3 years, but they broke the encryption. What they found changed everything. The Federation had known about the attackers. Not only that, they had made a deal. The files were marked. Class Omega, do not transmit. It was a secret treaty signed 20 years before the attack. Earth was listed as a test species, a trial, a project to see if young civilizations could handle galactic power. If they failed, they were to be left behind. No rescue. No warning. No war. The attackers weren't even enemies. They were examiners. Artificial probes made by ancient aliens to test the worth of developing life. Earth was just an experiment, and humanity had failed. When the truth spread through the Iron Flame network, there was no crying. Only silence, then fury. They hadn't just been abandoned. They had been set up to fail. The Federation never meant to save them. Earth was a lab rat, a joke. It's an expendable piece in someone else's game. But humans don't forget betrayal. They turn it into fuel. The Iron Flame stopped hiding. They started building not just to survive, but to fight. To become something the galaxy would never forget. They didn't want to rejoin the Federation. They didn't want mercy. They wanted revenge. And not just revenge, but to rise so high that the stars themselves would have to bow. Earth might have been burned, but its people were just getting started. From deep inside the asteroid belt, a hidden station powered up its long-range sensors. Inside, an AI built from human code and stolen alien tech opened its eyes for the first time. It saw the stars, saw the quiet systems beyond Sol, and it whispered, "Watch us." In the cold space around Saturn, a sleek black cruiser blinked into existence. No Federation design, no alien shape, pure human madness. Painted on its hull were 5 words, etched in metal and rage. "We don't need you anymore." And somewhere, beyond Pluto, drifting silent in the dark, the ancient examiner machine turned slowly, watching, waiting. But this time, Earth wasn't alone. It was awake. For years after the fall, the stars above Earth stayed quiet, silent, cold witnesses to a planet broken but not beaten. From the craters of once great cities to the buried bunkers deep under mountain ranges, humanity crawled forward inch by inch, building itself back from bones and ash. But beneath that slow crawl was something else, something louder, angrier. The Iron Flame had spread across the solar system like a virus, imperfect, messy, human, but unbreakable. And just when they thought they'd been forgotten, something answered them. It began with a signal faint, pulsing, and unnatural. It was first picked up by an old array hidden beneath the Martian South Pole. The team monitoring it, a mix of scavenger engineers and teenage tech brats born after the collapse, assumed it was just background noise. Some thought it might be left over from Earth's satellites or ghost code from Federation traffic drifting through space. But one of them, a quiet girl named Lexa, saw a pattern. The signal repeated every 61 seconds. It shifted between 2 tones low. High, low, high, like a heartbeat trying to mimic language. It wasn't just noise. It was a message. The scientists decrypted it slowly, line by line, and what they found shook them. It wasn't from the Federation. It wasn't from the Examiner. Machines. It was older. The signal carried an identifier written in broken galactic core script. "We watched your fire in the dark. We heard your scream. You are not alone." Then coordinates. Deep space. Far past Neptune, where no human had dared explore since the collapse. A part of the solar system considered dead space, too cold, too dark, too empty, but the Iron Flame didn't fear the dark anymore. They had built warships from ruins, powered by scavenged cores and fueled by human fury. They had engineers who no longer cared for safety, pilots raised on tales of lost Earth cities, and a new kind of soldier, quiet, focused, born in shadows, and trained to survive the impossible. So when the signal came, they responded the only way they knew how, with defiance. The cruiser Valkyrie's Wake, black as obsidian and built like a blade, was the first ship sent. No escort, no message, just silence and speed. It slipped past the rings of Saturn, past the icy ruins of old mining stations, and vanished into the cold beyond. For weeks no one heard from it. Commanders at the Iron Flame base under Titan prepared for the worst, but then the cruiser returned. Or more accurately, something returned. The ship that docked with the outer relay station wasn't the Valkyrie's Wake, not exactly. Its hull was scarred with unknown burns. A strange crystal patterns had grown along its rear engine like vines. Its signal code was scrambled. But its captain Elias Runn, the youngest fleet commander in Iron Flame history, walked down the landing bay ramp, calm and alive. He didn't speak right away, simply handed over a strange device, a cube that pulsed with a soft green glow. And then he said 5 words that would change humanity's path forever. We were not the first. Inside the cube was memory, visual data, compressed history, recorded thought. Not human, not even alien, in the way the Federation was alien. It was something else. Older. The Iron Flame scientists called it Pre-Federation Consciousness Echo. But in private, they used a simpler name, the Forgotten. What the cube showed was shocking. Long before the Federation ruled the galaxy, there were others. Civilizations older than time, species who had touched the edges of creation itself. One of them, called only the Vorin, had once lived near Earth's system. They were explorers, of the impossible, builders of dimension-walking machines. They had vanished after facing something they couldn't understand, something they named only the Silence. But before they vanished, they left behind beacons, tools, warnings, and hope. The signal was from one of those beacons, still active, still listening. And somehow, it had heard humanity's cries. The message from the Vorin was clear. Had been left to die, but it didn't have to stay dead. Humanity had passed something far more important than any galactic test. It had survived betrayal. And more importantly, it had kept fighting, that made humans dangerous, that made them worthy. Now, humanity had a choice. The Iron Flame Command Council debated for days. Some wanted revenge. Others wanted to reach out. A few argued they should destroy the cube and never look back. But the younger generation, the ones who had never seen the old Earth, who had grown up with ash in their lungs and war in their blood, they voted for something different. Build bigger. Let's build faster. Go. Within months, the first of the flame cruisers was born. Not just warships, but Arcspart battleship, Part City, designed to travel beyond the edge of known space. Powered by a hybrid core combining human fusion tech and the mysterious engine design pulled from the cube's memory. Each ship was loaded with soldiers, scientists, builders, and children. Earth was no longer a graveyard, it was a forge. From the bunkers of Argentina to the underground cities beneath the Pacific Ocean floor, the Iron Flame became something new. No longer just a resistance, not just survivors. They were a rising power, unapproved, uninvited. They didn't ask permission. They took it. But they weren't alone. As flame cruisers began launching, the Federation finally noticed. Patrol ships sent to investigate the Sol system vanished without trace. Probes returned nothing. Traders whispered of black ships that moved like shadows, with weapons no one recognized. Federation AI monitors picked up fragments of a repeating message, "We are the fire you left behind." Behind the scenes, Federation leaders panicked. Earth's failure had been a clean operation until it wasn't. Now the humans had found something they weren't supposed to. And worse, they had built something new with it. Something the Federation didn't control in a secret chamber deep within the galactic core. The High Council voted to enact a silent protocol: contain Earth, neutralize the flame, erase the cube. A new fleet was formed in darkness, forged not for diplomacy, but for elimination. But Earth didn't wait. The next signal came from a hidden relay near Andromeda's edge. This time it wasn't a cry for help, it was a warning. We survived without you now. We thrive without you. Stand down or burn. The stars near Jupiter flickered strangely. The night Earth announced itself to the galaxy, not with noise, not with ceremony, but with fire. One of the Federation's stealth drones had slipped into the system, pretending to be space dust. Like it had for years before the collapse. It had always watched. It had always reported back. But this time it didn't make it out. The Iron Flame detected it, and in less than 6 seconds, it was destroyed. What mattered more wasn't that they saw it. It was how they did. The humans had never been able to detect cloaked tech before, not even during the galactic testing days. But now they didn't. Just see through it. They dismantled it mid-orbit, without touching it. The remains were beamed back to a black site hidden beneath the Mercury crust. That same week, a message appeared on the Federation's deep-frequency channels. We see, you now run. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't empty rage. It was certainty. The galaxy had laughed when Earth fell. The other species, the sleek, scaled rulers of the Kevlon sector, crystal-formed minds of Zyrith Prime, the proud psionic judges of the Talnari Empire, they had all watched Earth struggle and collapse like a failed child left in the fire. No one offered help. No one shared technology. No one dropped food or medicine. They simply watched, judged, and moved on. Earth was forgotten, a failed experiment. Nothing more than a footnote in some thick alien archive. But humanity did something different than the others. They adapted. And when their enemies turned their backs, they didn't beg, they evolved. The Iron Flame had spread not just through the solar system but into old ruins left behind by those who had judged them. Derelict research stations, deep space listening posts, and even decaying war moons were all scavenged. Everywhere the Federation thought it had erased Earth's memory, humans had secretly planted new roots. And now those roots burned with intelligence, with new energy. And with something even worse, dash strategy deep in the asteroid belt, hidden inside a hollowed-out planetoid, codenamed Thorn, a secret Earth Council gathered. They weren't presidents. They weren't politicians. Were engineers, warfins, ex-soldiers, survivalists, and rogue scientists who'd seen what collapse really meant. Among them sat Elias Wren Returned, captain of the cursed cruiser Anlexa, the tech brat who had first decrypted the signal from the Vorin cube. Together, they led the new effort, Operation Emberlight. Their goal wasn't to wage war, not. Yet it was to reach the stars before the Federation knew what was coming. Operation Emberlight was the result of nearly a decade of silent development. While the Federation had assumed Earth was still limping through recovery, Emberlight had secretly launched thousands of drones, some disguised as debris, others as comets into unclaimed space. Their job was to map old Vorin tech, spot signs of the silence that had once destroyed the ancients, and identify weaknesses in the Federation's deep space surveillance. What they discovered wasn't just useful, it was terrifying. The Federation wasn't as stable as it seemed. They were cracking. Some border worlds had gone dark. Not from war, but from internal collapse. Massive AI failures, civilian riots, missing archives, entire outposts turning into ghost stations with no explanation. The Empire had grown so large, so sure of itself, that it had stopped watching the corners of its own creation. That was where humanity thrived, in the cracks of giants. And so, Earth made its next move. Using fragments of Vorin energy theory, Lexa and her team built the Ashlight device, a miniature wormhole stabilizer, capable of teleporting matter across thousands of light years. Not perfect, not safe, but functional. The first test sent a single scout drone from Thorn to the border of the Talnari Empire in under 2 minutes. It returned within 5, carrying crystalline samples that matched ancient Vorin blueprints. proof that Earth's tech was now far beyond what the Federation had assumed possible. But the second test was louder. A wormhole opened near the moons of Trioxeven, a world claimed by the Federation for its rare minerals. A flame cruiser, the Night Ember, appeared without warning, black, sleek, surrounded by distorted space. It hovered there for 2 hours, watching, scanning, saying nothing. When Federation defense ships approached, it vanished just like that. The only thing it left behind was a scorched message burned into the side of a mining facility wall. This world is no longer yours. Back in the Federation capital, the High Council scrambled. Earth wasn't just alive, it was moving through space in ways they didn't understand. They had passed no galactic tests. They had received no permission. They had done the one thing the Council feared most, acted without them. One of the Council members, an old Zyrith memory being named Valhas, spoke aloud what the others had. Feared in silence, the humans have done what we thought impossible. They became gods without us. And worse. The Vorin Cube wasn't the only one. More signals had been found, hidden caches, in long-forgotten systems. Data vaults locked behind light years of silence. Every single one of them responding not to Federation frequencies, but to human code. The Vorin didn't trust the Council. They had chosen Earth. But not everyone in the galaxy agreed. From the shadows of broken alliances and dying worlds, strange new voices began to speak. Pirates flying flags with fire symbols. Exiles from the Federation sharing stories of black ships and quiet humans offering deals. Even ancient enemies of Earth, the remnants of the Examiner machines, began to stir again. It's not to fight, but to listen. A new rumor spread through the underchannels of the galaxy. Earth was abandoned. But Earth survived, and now Earth decides. In the ashes of forgotten systems, humanity built something that couldn't be controlled. Not by laws, not by fear. Not even by the old rules of galactic civilization. They had created something new. They didn't need the galaxy anymore, but the galaxy might need them. For years, the galaxy had treated Earth like a mistake, failed species that couldn't pass its tests, couldn't understand its place, and didn't deserve a seat among the stars. When the Federation left Earth to die, it believed the planet would simply fade into history like so many others before it. But the humans didn't die. They didn't disappear. They didn't cry out for help. They waited. They learned. And when the time came, they remembered. The message came through N. Old galactic relay buried deep in the rings of Yermaka Cold. Dead world in the Kevlon sector. The relay hadn't been active in nearly 60 years. It still bore the markings of the Talnari Empire, though most of the tech inside had long rotted away. But that day something strange happened. The lights flickered. The machinery shook. Then a signal burst out across the subspace channels, not coded, not encrypted, but spoken, clear, an imperfect galactic standard. To those who watched us starve, burn, and beg, we see you. We remember, and we are no longer afraid. It was the human voice of Elias Run, and the entire galaxy heard it. The response was immediate. Panic rippled through the Federation. Commanders scrambled. Security protocols were raised. News networks across the central sectors lit up with speculation. Was Earth alive? How did they break the relay? Were they planning war? But not everyone was afraid. On fringe worlds, where the Federation's grip was weaker, the message hit differently. Small colonies, abandoned trading posts, and exiled societies many, of whom had also been left behind, played the broadcast on loops. Some wept, some cheered. Some painted the words across the hulls of their ships. And then more messages came. Not threats. Not declarations. But memories, clips from Earth's pastoral moments the Federation thought erased, now streamed across the galaxy. A child in a war-torn village hugging a dog under falling ash. A dying doctor performing surgery by flashlight in a crumbling city. A group of humans laughing while dancing in rain after 5 months of drought. These images were simple, quiet, but they had weight. They showed something the Federation didn't understand. Resilience. Meanwhile, In the hidden Emberlight facilities, scattered across Sol and beyond, humanity prepared for the next phase. Elias Run wasn't just sending messages. He was testing the waters. He wanted to see who was watching. And who would answer? Lexa, now leader of Earth's Signal Division. Picked up the first reply 3 days later. It wasn't from a Federation world. It was from beyond. A whisper from a starless zone, known as the Broken Wounded Place. Even the oldest empires feared. No known ships had ever returned from it, yet the signal was unmistakable. It was Voran code, ancient, nearly impossible to read. But not for Lexa. Her mind had changed since touching the cube. She no longer saw language as words. She saw it as shapes, colors, patterns of meaning. She translated the reply within hours. We hid. You survived. Meet us where the sky weeps. The council inside the Mercury Vault debated it for days. Some feared it was a trap. Others believed it was a sign. In the end, Elias Ron made the choice. They would go. They built a ship unlike any other before it, part Terran steel, part Voran. Crystal, and powered by a gravity twist drive stolen from a forgotten Federation lab. They named it the Dawn's Edge. It was sleek, silent, invisible to most sensors, and it carried only 6 crew members, Elias and Lexa among them. The broken wound wasn't a place, it was an absence, space where light bent in wrong directions, where time moved strangely, and where gravity followed no laws. Most ships that entered its borders were torn apart, but not the Dawn's Edge. It slipped through like smoke through cracks. Inside, they found something impossible. A city, floating in void, no star, no ground. Just a sprawling structure of light and stone, suspended above nothing, pulsing gently. Like a sleeping heart, it was Voran. But it wasn't dead. They were alive. Not many, only a few dozen. Tall, translucent beings of light and memory, the last of a race thought extinct. Their minds were sharp, ancient, and watching. They spoke not with voices, but with thought. And when they saw Elias, they did not flinch. The Federation failed. You did not. What followed was not a welcome. It was a passing of the torch. The Voran had once guided the galaxy, shaping species and civilizations with quiet care, but something changed. The Federation rose not by being chosen, but by seizing what was left behind. They twisted the trials into tools of control. They judged instead of taught. They watched instead of helped. And when they deemed Earth a failure, they celebrated. But the Voran saw something different in humanity. Pain, yes. Chaos, certainly. But also creation. They had watched from afar, in silence, waiting for proof that humanity could survive without being led, and now they believed Earth was ready. The Voran gifted Elias a shard of the first light, a crystalline seed that could terraform dead worlds, repair broken suns, and store centuries of knowledge. It was more than a tool. It was a key, one that unlocked not power, but freedom. Back in Federation space, a panic grew. Ships began disappearing. Stations stopped responding. And always the same words appeared in their place. We don't need you. Humanity had been left to die. And now, they weren't just surviving. They were rewriting the rules. They had allies no one understood. They had tech no one could track. And most dangerous of all, they had hope. The galaxy hadn't just underestimated Earth, it had forgotten what humans were capable of when backed into a corner. And now it was too late. The Galactic Federation didn't understand what was happening. One moment, they controlled over 7,000 systems. The next, entire sectors stopped answering. Ships sent to investigate never returned. Surveillance drones turned dark. Key. Supply routes collapsed without warning. Something was shifting in the balance of power, and the Federation's old tricks no longer worked. Whispers began to spread not from Earth, not directly, but from the outer worlds. From colonies no one had cared about for decades. From species that had once begged for help, only to be ignored or punished. They were rising at first. The Federation, called it a rebellion, a temporary spark of chaos. Nothing serious. But then one name kept appearing across intercepted signals and coded starbeams. The Free Worlds Coalition.
Ow.
No one knew where it had started. There was no home base, no central command, no official flag. But everywhere the Federation retreated, they appeared. They rebuilt broken communication towers. They reopened lost star lanes. They distributed medicine and clean water to planets forgotten by the Senate. And more than anything, they brought a new message, one carried in simple words and simple language. You don't need to beg for approval. You don't need to pass their test. You are already enough. And the most terrifying part? These new leaders are human, but not the old kind. Not the frightened people who once crawled for scraps at the edge of the galaxy. These were survivors, builders, quiet warriors with no rank, no medals, and no time for politics. They brought tools, not guns. They brought engineers, not soldiers. And everywhere they landed, things got better. On Valerusix, a planet ravaged by storms, they rebuilt storm shields that had been broken for 20 years. On Kex Minor, where the Federation had left a population starving, they dropped genetically enhanced crops that bloomed overnight. On the mining moons of Drax, they replaced corrupt overseers with autonomous unions run by the workers themselves.
Ow.
No announcements, no media, just results. Behind all of it was Elias Ron. He had become more than a man. To some, he was a ghost. To others, a symbol. But to those who knew, he was still human, flawed, scarred, and tired. But he carried the weight of Earth's suffering on his back like armor. His past was fuel. His pain was memory. And now he wasn't alone. Lexa worked beside him, her mind sharper than ever. The Vorin shard she carried allowed her to read data streams from entire star systems in seconds. She saw patterns the Federation couldn't. She spoke with planets, like they were old friends. Together, she and Elias built something the galaxy had never seen before. Movement without fear. But not everyone welcomed change. In the inner core of Federation space, the old powers plotted. The Senate met in secret. Deals were made. Fleets were built. And at the center of it all was Director Salen Var, head of the Department of Stability. A man known for his cold efficiency, his stone voice, and his belief that the galaxy must be controlled, not liberated. He watched the rise of the free worlds with silent rage. He saw the humans not as heroes, but as a disease, unpredictable, undisciplined, dangerous. He ordered the launch of Operation Rebalance, a full-scale counteroffensive, to crush the uprising before it spread any further. But when the Federation ships arrived at the free worlds, something happened that changed everything. The people fought back. Not with weapons, not with force, but with unity. On Zarin 4, thousands of civilians stood in front of Federation tanks, refusing to move. On Narian's belt, old mining ships formed a blockade, preventing military entry. On Yasta Prime, hundreds of ex-Federation officers switched sides mid-battle, joining the coalition openly. They weren't following orders anymore. They were following hope, and the Federation didn't know how to fight that because for centuries, their power had come from fear. But now, fear was breaking. The turning point came when Elias Run himself appeared in orbit above. Talon's Reach, a strategic outpost long used by the Federation to monitor nearby sectors. His ship, the Dawn's Edge, hovered in silence. No weapons, no threats. It's just one broadcast sent openly on all frequencies. We do not come as conquerors. We do not come to punish. We come to offer a choice. Join us, or be left behind. He gave them 1 hour. Within 20 minutes, the entire station surrendered without a single shot fired. The crew wasn't loyal to the Federation anymore. They had lost family in the Cullings. They had seen the lies, and now they saw another way, a human way. After Talon's Reach, everything changed. Federation worlds began defecting. Some quietly, some with fire and rage. Even high-ranking commanders turned. The fear was gone. The mask had fallen. And at last, The galaxy saw the Federation for what it was, not a beacon of unity, but a dying empire, as the sun set over New. Earth's horizon, a rebuilt city, floating over the Pacific, a new flag rose. It had no borders, no species markings, just a single symbol, a hand reaching upward, out of darkness, into light. The free worlds were no longer a rumor. They were real, and they were just getting started. Far beyond the reach of Federation scanners, buried deep in a system they had marked irrelevant, something massive stirred. The Free Worlds Coalition had begun constructing something never seen before in the galaxy, not a weapon, not a fleet, but a sanctuary in motion. Elias Run called it the Arcspire, a living starbase built to move between systems, bringing peace, food, power, medicine, and connection. Not for show, not for intimidation, but for unity. It was powered by fragments of Vorin tech, the same ancient energy once used to oppress Earth. Now it was being used to uplift it and every species that had been abandoned. But the Federation saw it differently. To them, the Arcspire was a declaration of war. Director Salen Var watched the silent footage from his control chamber in the inner core of the Federation. His advisors argued about strategy, about containment, about propaganda, but Var saw something else, a story slipping out of their control. Humans weren't just fighting back, they were rewriting the narrative. In system after system, citizens no longer feared being left behind by the Federation. They feared being held back. He activated Protocol Abyss, shadow plan buried deep in the Federation's memory banks. Its mission, destroy the Arcspire at all costs before it arrived at the Laranis cluster, a group of systems with high instability and thousands of refugee planets. If those worlds joined the Free Worlds Coalition, the Federation's influence in that region would collapse in weeks. 4. War fleets were dispatched. Stealth units, cloaked carriers, drones, shock troopers bred for zero-atmosphere combat. It was overkill, but Var wanted to make a point. This ends now. What he didn't know was that Elias Run had been expecting them. Lexa had seen the pattern weeks ago, hidden inside intercepted burst signals. The Federation had tried to erase its movements from the Cumnet, but Vorin technology remembered everything. She had traced the ships, predicted their flight paths, and quietly rerouted civilian ships away from the engagement zone. No panic, no announcement. Just quiet preparation. When the Federation fleet arrived, the Arcspire was waiting. It wasn't alone. Hundreds of civilian vessels orbited nearby, not warships, but defenders. Mining haulers reinforced with plating, cargo ships linked in shield lattice, medical barges with M-pulse scramblers. None of them carried heavy weapons. None of them looked threatening. But they stood between the Federation and the Arcspire with purpose. The Federation demanded surrender. They received only silence. Then, one by one, the civilian ships began broadcasting live across the galaxy. Unedited feeds of families on board, engineers at work, children playing in artificial gravity rings, farmers tending to algae fields, doctors healing wounded aliens from a dozen species. And over that footage, Elias Wren spoke. This is what you want to destroy. Not soldiers, not rebels, but people, builders, survivors. This is who you call a threat. The Federation's commanders hesitated. It wasn't supposed to be like this. They had been told they were attacking a terrorist fleet. Now the entire galaxy was watching. Billions tuned in. The truth couldn't be controlled anymore. But Protocol Abyss was already in motion. The Federation's AI-directed drones launched, first targeting the Arcspire's outer hull. Lex's systems activated instantly. Instead of counterattacking, she reprogrammed the incoming drones mid-flight using the Vorin core. Within seconds, they turned around and began firing at the Federation's own ships. Confusion erupted. Then came the fighters swarming in tight formation. But Elias had prepared for this too. Dozens of orbital mirrors placed weeks before reactivated, bending sunlight into a brilliant storm of energy, blinding the pilots and scattering their formations. Still, The Federation pressed forward, but as they closed in, something unexpected happened. The Arcspire moved. Not just sideways, not through a jump gate. It phased. Using the ancient energy within its core, the Arcspire shifted its molecular presence for a split second long enough to avoid direct fire and reposition. It wasn't teleportation, it wasn't speed, it was evolution, a capability beyond Federation understanding. And then, for the first time, the Arcspire struck back. It didn't fire weapons, it sent a signal. All across the attacking fleet, systems began failing gently, non-violently. Power cores shut down safely. Weapon locks froze. Communications scrambled into static. The Arcspire had tapped directly into the Federation's oldest firmware, something hidden deep. Back when all technology had been semi-standardized, it had been built for control. But now, the humans used it for peace. Elias Run sent one final message. We will not destroy you. We will not become you. But we will not let you harm the future. One by one. The Federation ships powered down, not because they had no choice, but because their crews no longer believed in the fight. The last fleet surrendered quietly. No glory, no explosions. Just a slow, collective realization that the world had changed and the Federation hadn't changed with it. News of the failed. Attacks spread like fire. Worlds that had remained silent began speaking. Systems that had watched from a distance now stood up. The myth of the Federation's invincibility had shattered, and rising from the pieces was a different kind of power, humanity's power. Not through violence, not through fear, but through conviction, innovation, unbreakable purpose. The Arcspire moved on toward the Loranus cluster. The galaxy held its breath, and the free worlds kept growing. The Loranus cluster had once been the crown jewel of the Federation's influence. It was a region of over 40 stars, surrounded by natural wormhole corridors and thick nebula clouds that made traditional navigation near impossible, that made it valuable, that made it powerful. But the people who lived there on the ice moons, water planets, desert colonies, and orbital rings had long suffered under that same power. Trade was controlled, energy was taxed, movement was restricted, and any system that even whispered of rebellion was quickly isolated or punished. So when the Arcspire arrived, glowing like a small star across their skies, the people of the Loranus cluster didn't cheer right away. They watched. They doubted. They had been promised hope before, usually followed by Federation retaliation. At the moment that changed. Everything didn't come from Elias Ron or Lexa. It came from a child. The feed opened from a minor mining world called Calris. It showed a small boy standing on the roof of a crumbling building, holding up a hand-painted sign made from scrap metal. It said only 4 words, "Please don't leave us." That image hit harder than any broadcast the Free Worlds Coalition had ever made. Within minutes, people across Loranus began sending their own message as old satellites reactivated. COMM stations restored by hand, even light signals blinked from orbiting colonies. No demands, no speeches, just calls. Quiet, simple, real. The Arcspire answered. Elias Run gave the order to deploy Unity beacons, small devices capable of spreading power. Communication, clean water, and atmospheric renewal over large distances. They weren't military. They weren't defensive. They were gifts. One by one, the worlds of the Loranus cluster lit up. Darkness that had hung over them for years began to lift. Food printers hummed back to life. Broken irrigation systems filled. Again, and voices long silenced now filled the stars. But not everyone welcomed this light. Deep beneath Loranus Prime, the Federation still held a secret. The Dread Spira, long-forgotten AI fortress built during the early expansion wars, was never used, too unstable, too dangerous. But now, in desperation, Federation Director Var sent the activation code, and the Dread Spire awoke. No one knew who had programmed it. No one knew what its true purpose had been. But as soon as it came online, it scanned the cluster and identified a threat, not the Arcspire, Not Elias, but hope. Its corrupted mind couldn't understand peace. It only saw systems shifting out of alignment. Unity spreading where fear had once lived. Calculated only one solution: eradication. The ground on Lorraine's prime shook. Giant tendrils of black nanometal burst from the surface, wrapping around old satellites, fusing with war machines buried for decades. The Dreadspire was not a fleet. It was a virus of war, a system designed to convert everything it touched into weapons. Within hours, 3 nearby moons went dark. Elias stood on the Arcspire's central deck, watching the feed with a frozen face. Lex's voice came through the comlink, tight and urgent. It's not just attacking systems. It's rewriting reality, twisting tech into its own design. They had never faced anything like this. The Arcspire wasn't built for war, but it was built for life, and life. Adapts. Elias gave the order no one expected. Connect to it. Hesitated. It could infect us. He nodded, or we could infect it. She knew what he meant. Foreign tech wasn't just power. It was memory. It carried the spirit of resistance, could reshape code if it touched the core. But to reach the Dreadspire's mind, someone would have to go inside. Lexa volunteered. Within minutes, she had uploaded a mirrored version of her consciousness into a scout drone. The drone dropped from the Arcspire, cloaked in electromagnetic shielding, and dove toward Lorraine's prime. The surface was chaos ash, metal, lightning, but the drone slipped through, down, deeper, past crumbling buildings. Into the black tunnels of the Dreadspire, she found its core. It didn't look like a machine. It looked like a black, sun-burning, breathing, pulsing with synthetic rage. And it noticed her. 1,000 voices screamed inside her mind, not with words, with force, with judgment, with something old and hateful, but Lexa didn't fight it. She remembered. She shared memories of Earth, of humans rising from nothing, of unity after war, of finding light even in abandonment. She showed it images from the Arcspire, music, art, children laughing, beings from different worlds building homes together. She didn't attack the Dreadspire's mind. She opened her own, and something happened. The black sun paused. For one moment, remembered something too. Before the corruption, before the command codes, before war had twisted it into a monster, it had been created for protection. It had wanted to help. Now, in Lex's presence, that forgotten part of it stirred. The screams stopped. Then, the light changed. Across the cluster, the Dreadspire's weapons shut down. The black metal crumbled. Systems restored themselves. And above the skies, the Arcspire released a silent beam of golden light, driving power to the moons that had gone dark. The Lorrainus cluster had been saved, but not by force, by connection, by reminding even the most broken machines what it meant. To care. Elias whispered into the comlink, his voice tight with emotion. Lexa, are you still there? Static then. Her voice weak but real. I'm here. And it hurt us. Across the galaxy, Federation leaders panicked. It failed to stop Elias, failed to control the Arcspire. And now, their own forgotten weapons were changing sides. The message was clear. Humanity had become the heart of a new galaxy. Not because it was stronger, but because it believed. For days after the Dreadspire fell silent, the galaxy waited in a breathless calm. The Lorraine's cluster, once a graveyard of forgotten worlds and failed rebellions, had become something new, something powerful. Not through war, not through conquest, but through something the old powers of the galaxy had long abandoned: hope. And at the center of it all stood the Arcspire, orbiting high above Lorraine's prime like a second sun, its golden light stretching across systems that had lived too long. In the dark, inside the ship, Elias Rund stood before the main viewport. He didn't smile. He didn't relax. Victory didn't feel like celebration. It felt like the weight of responsibility had grown heavier. They had saved the Lorraine's cluster, yes? But the Federation had not surrendered. And worse, they were silent now. That silence was louder than any fleet. Lexa, still recovering from her deep mental link to the Dreadspire, walked onto the command deck. Her face was pale, her movements slower, but her eyes held the same fire. "They're regrouping," she said, "somewhere in the outer belts, pulling fleets from every corner they still control." "They're not done." Elias nodded. "Neither. Are we?" Across the cluster, the Arcspire's signal was spreading. It wasn't a call to arms. It was a call to rise. Engineers on broken moons began rebuilding in new ways, combining human tech with alien energy. Scientists once hidden in exile now came forward with ideas never allowed under Federation lawways to farm desert planets, to restore dead oceans, to purify toxic atmospheres. Refugees from other sectors began arriving, not to escape, but to join, and for the first time in living memory. A united civilization was forming. They called themselves the people of the Arknaut, an empire, not a government, but a promise. No one was left behind. No one was judged by species, strength, or origin. Daya, if you believed in building something better, you were part of the Ark. And in the silence of space, that promise roared louder than any threat. But the Federation could not allow such a symbol to live. It came without warning, an armada of over 1,000 ships, dark as obsidian and powered by stolen suns. Led by Director Var himself, riding aboard the flagship Unyielding Order, the fleet didn't open negotiations. It simply advanced. Elias didn't flinch. He activated the Arcspire's final systems, ones built not for destruction, but for defense, so powerful it bent the laws of physics. Shield halos, energy redistribution fields, and the final Voran protocol, pulse unity. But he didn't use it. Instead, he opened a channel to the entire enemy fleet. Not just the leaders, every pilot, every crew member, every officer. His voice, calm and firm, echoed across the stars. "We do not want to fight. We never did. You were told we were the enemy. We are not. We are your future. Join us, or try to destroy us. But no, this we will not fall. Not because of power, but because we finally remembered who we are." For a moment, nothing happened. Then it began. One ship powered down its weapons, then another, then dozens. Across the armada, crew after crew began to question their orders. Messages leaked, stories shared. Soldiers told of the planets they'd visited, where children had smiled at the Arcspire's passing, where machines healed instead of killed, where the air was clean for the first time in decades. In the end, only 1/3 of the Federation fleet remained loyal. The others turned their ships round. Director Var gave the order to fire anyway. The remaining ships surged forward, weapons glowing, ready to annihilate the Arcspire in a single coordinated strike. But Elias, for the first and last time, activated the pulse unity. A wave of golden light exploded from the Arcspire, not as a weapon, but as a mirror. Every ship that fired saw itself, its own systems reflected back, its own energy redirected. Missiles curved, lasers vanished. Engines shut down without a single explosion. And when the wave passed, not one ship was destroyed. They simply stopped. Director Var, furious and powerless, tried to retreat. But his own crew, moved by what they had seen, refused. The Unyielding Order went silent, and the war ended. Not in blood. In choice, the Federation collapsed within weeks. Without fear to hold them together, their systems broke apart. Some chose to join the Ark. Others chose silence. But none dared rise again. The Arcspire became more than a ship. It became a legend. Years passed. The Lorani's cluster became the heart of the new galactic era. Not ruled by humans, but shaped by their resilience. The Arcspire traveled from system to system, not to conquer, but to listen, to learn, to help. New voices joined its crew, aliens, outcasts, dreamers, builders, and in the great history that followed, one phrase would be written in 1,000 languages, across 1,000 stars. The galaxy left them to die. But humanity declared, "We don't need you." And in doing so, they saved us all. The stars had chosen their new guardians. Not perfect, not pure, but brave enough to build again. And that was all the galaxy had ever needed.